I want for you to think about, imagine sirens, bright lights, crowded scenes. You know this scene very well, but I want you to imagine it in a way with all of your nervous system tuned to notice every single sound and every sensation with the volume up to max. In this new episode, I have the opportunity to sit down with school principal and trainer Jennifer Kaufman, who is going to unpack how autism can look like things we often see, things like defiance or intoxication in the field, and why small, precise shifts from us as first responders can completely change the outcome. Jennifer shares a practical playbook for police, fire, EMS, and dispatch to trade the calm down technique for literal single-step instructions. By building in these longer pauses for processing, using one clear voice instead of a crowd, and keeping simple tools ready, things like a notepad or a tablet, anything for alternative communication is going to help us serve the community. We are going to dive further into how she has developed some actionable community plans for people, including New Jersey's Blue Envelope program, which is so cool and awesome. And she's going to tell us about her own personal buy-in to her mission to educate first responders on how to work with people with autism. It is a cool conversation, you guys. I know that everyone is going to find some kind of value, maybe even some answers to some questions that you might have about autism, or what does it actually mean to be on the spectrum, or what does elopement mean? All of these things we are going to explore together in this conversation. So get comfortable. Maybe get us going on the radio, wherever you are listening to this episode. We appreciate you taking the time, and we appreciate Jennifer and her advocacy and support towards educating first responders and working with individuals who have autism. All right, everybody, let's enjoy the show. Well, welcome into another episode of Sit Around the Fire. I am here with another very special guest, Jennifer Kaufman, and she is coming to speak to us today about a topic that I think is very uneducated, or awareness around it, or the tools around what she's going to present to us is much needed within the first responder community, but then also connecting with families too, and understanding that autism and that diagnosis is becoming more and more prevalent, that the more education we can bring around it, the better off for everyone. So Jennifer, welcome into the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ashley.
Yeah. Well, let's start off like I usually like to, and I want to ask if you have a message to the people who are listening today. What would you most like them to walk away with from everything that you're going to speak about today?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think that the thing people need to walk away with is understanding that autism presents itself differently in each person that has it.
Mhm.
And understanding what those pieces could look like will just help us support our community members even better.
Yeah, brilliant. So I'm excited to unpack all that and understand more about it, because I love to learn more about it too. And I know everybody listening is going to get so much value out of this conversation. So give us an idea about, because you're really leading the charge, and you have a very special program that you have put together and offered. So tell us a little bit about your work that you're doing with first response autism, and where this all came from. What inspired you to do this?
Sure. Well, a little bit about me. I'm a school principal at a school for learners with autism in northern New Jersey. And I am also the grandmother of a 7-year-old who has autism. So sort of worlds colliding, right? Um, I also have a home down on the Jersey Shore where I spend time on the weekends. And it's a beach community. And over the past few summers, I've watched law enforcement and first responders find, like, say, a 6-year-old running down the street in bare feet in a bathing suit, and you watch that team try to communicate with this child who's obviously lost, but might not have communication skills or might be exhibiting behaviors. And I've seen this over and over again. Um, and it just seems like sometimes the police officers have the best of intentions, but they might not be equipped with the right tools. And how do you work with somebody who doesn't have typical communication or very limited or no communication?
Mhm.
Or how do like we've seen police officers provide treats to a child who might have swallowing issues or who might have allergies, which are very prevalent in the autistic community. Um, so just having that knowledge is like, okay, this person isn't presenting as a typical person. They may have autism or they may be neurotypical. And how to deal with that is what really motivated me to think about like what kind of training could be provided to the people that deal with the public every day.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I love hearing that because I think we sometimes, especially on calls, like we don't often know what we're looking for, can recognize like what is showing up or understanding. I mean, you you had a lot within that of even just the treats we give out as thinking about we don't know or we just don't even recognize. So how do you teach or walk people through like what are some of the things and tactics we look for when we are on calls or we're interacting with people?
So some common, I guess, misperceptions of when autism presents itself, it could look like defiance, right? It could look like intentional, like not communicating. It could look like maybe somebody is under the influence of drugs or alcohol. So then sort of determining, well, which is it,
Mhm.
right? Um, I think that knowing how to really identify. So with intoxication, for example, you've got that smell of alcohol in the breath. Um, but with autism, you might be seeing a lack of eye contact. You know, with autism, you might be seeing requesting information from somebody, a child or an adult, and you're not getting the response in the way you might expect it from a typical person. And you might have to give that person more time to respond, or you may be able to provide that person with paper and pencil so that they can write down if they're not able to communicate and they are able to write. There are a variety of ways to really identify that somebody is neurotypical or has autism and has communication challenges. Um, an officer might see somebody presenting with flapping or some type of stim that jumping up and down, for example. That's a very common presentation of autism. Somebody jumping up and down because their anxiety is heightened, and it's not just to be difficult.
Mhm.
It's things like that that really have to be looked at and identified when going into a situation.
Yeah, so I know we kind of spoke about this before we started recording, but how you're in this world 100%. How much like how often do you think we're running into this more than we know, or how prevalent is this now becoming in for kids, but then also like there's a lot of undiagnosed adults with it too, or adults who are getting diagnosed. So how prevalent do you think that this really is um in the here and now?
I think that there is a certain amount of there are certain individuals that officers that all of us come across that are not able to communicate the way a typical person would communicate, might miss social cues, might be agitated by things like lights and sirens,
Mhm.
or a group of people around them. Um, and I think that that is, it's really going to have to become one of our assessment tools where we say, why is this person behaving this way? And could it be because this person is, I like to say, operating on a different operating system than everybody else, right? It's
Yeah.
not it's not that they're broken, it's not that they're under the influence, it's they're literally operating under a different type of operating system than your typical person.
Yeah, and that you brought up a good point there with the lights and the sirens and thinking of just being on a call. Like it's stressful for anybody who has to call 911 or anybody who's in that experience anyways, but when you have these more like these sensory things are heightened and that operating system like you mentioned is different. What advice, like I'm just thinking through, so I used to be a paramedic and thinking through like, okay, in the back of the ambulance, that's a lot going on for anybody. But you have the lights and you have different people talking and doing things at the same time. And if you're having to do some kind of procedure, like starting an IV or doing anything, like can you give some help or suggestion to how you could as a first responder could navigate this to where you could make it a little less I don't necessarily like traumatizing but stimulating or activating for that person? Like what are some helpful tips that we could do to help in that way?
So, it's funny you mentioned ambulance because if somebody's in an ambulance, there's a crisis, right? And time is usually of the essence. But my advice was going to be to take a step back and to slow down and to look at that person and what is that person responding to. So with the autism, there's a saying that if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism, meaning that it really presents itself very differently. And while there are some commonalities like the social cueing, not understanding social cues, or communication issues, eye contact, that type of thing, which is seen more frequently in an autistic population, it's really up to those that are trying to support the person with autism or support any person to sort of take a step back and look at what is it that this person needs.
Hmm. Okay.
If a behavior is happening, um, the behavior isn't necessarily out of defiance because often behavior is a form of communication.
Mm.
You mentioned the lights in an ambulance, and of course, the lights in an ambulance are very bright because they have to be because you are starting a line or you're doing all sorts of things. But if there was a way to lower the lights, shut off the lights, and it's not always possible, but we try to do the best that we can, right?
Yeah. I really love and resonated what you just said, and I think it goes on so many levels, but you said behavior is a form of communication. I think that's like, and that goes across the board for everybody, but really powerful to understand in the here and now. Um, what are some ways that you think we could communicate differently or change our communication tactics? Even I know you do a lot of work with police in general, which they're the ones in the highest conflict for sure. But what are some differences in communication that you would offer that would help um, to make that person feel seen and feel safe and like effectively like handle the situation that needs to be done.
Sure, and I think that's a great question. And like, approaching communication to make it more effective is important. Um, Long pauses before responding, giving that processing time to someone who might be struggling with processing. I know even my grandson, I can say to him, like, hey, are you hungry? Do you want something? Or even hello. And I might get a response 30 seconds to a minute later because they're processing that answer. So giving that processing time versus like, come on, you need to tell me what your name is. What's your name? You know your name. Tell me your name. But asking a name and then backing off and waiting to get that. Because it might be very quiet. It might be very difficult to understand in some people who might have, struggle with enunciation, that type of communication. Um, but really waiting, giving that wait time is crucial. I think that being very literal with requests is also important. Um, Saying like, hey, I need you to calm down is not going to really get anywhere with somebody who is dealing with autism. But asking the person to sit down on the curb, I need you to sit down. A small child, I need you to hold my hand. Hold my hand. And making it very specific to what you want the individual to do. That literal type of instruction and directions can really help in a situation where somebody might be escalated, there might be a lot of tension and anxiety, but providing very specific directions as to what that person needs to do can help someone with autism understand what's the expectation is.
Yeah, that's really powerful and like so helpful and clear advice to give, really a tactic to give. Because I'd imagine like um I'm not super versed, like you definitely have so much knowledge in this area, so I'm learning along with everyone else.
We're all learning. That's right.
Thinking, thinking about like how I would imagine that stress manifests and is processed in potentially in a different way with um all of us, but anybody who has a different operating system like you referred to, how have you seen or what do you think that that looks like?
So, stress can manifest itself differently. Stress can appear like the individual can appear very calm and taking it all in, but be internally overwhelmed and then suddenly just lose it. Suddenly just melt down, have a behavior. And like we said, behavior is communication. And that behavior could be just indicating that, like, look, this is just all too much. Um, some people might have fight or flight responses, but and that could be a typical person as well, right? But with person who has autism, it could look like withdrawal rather than panic. They could just literally shut down and withdraw into themselves and limit their communication and just try to stop that external stimulus from um, affecting their sensory system. It might just be sensory overload.
Sure.
And that could just look like now they're not talking to you at all. Now they're not looking at you. Now they are just maybe scripting and repeating lines from a TV show over and over again. Or doing something to soothe themselves.
Hmm. So this might be like a bit of a, it's not necessarily first responder directly, but interested in like what your take is on this of do you let's say someone in your family is exhibiting these signs, or I'm thinking of even people you work with can have this, that do you think most people have some of this tendency and it's just like overlooked or not known? Or like where do you think, because as a parent, I guess is what I'm thinking about too, is like how, what would you offer suggestions or encouragement to people to do to get more information and tools and resources with like how to communicate and how to do these things differently? Because plan A harder doesn't always work. So, like, I guess if all of that makes sense in a question, is like, what would you say for that, or for coworkers too that you're struggling maybe to work with or to deal with, of what's the best way to handle that?
Um, Not, I'm trying to figure out what the question is. I'm sorry.
No, yeah. No, I gave you like a lot of information there at the beginning, but I'm just, I guess, like throwing out my thoughts there of where I'm at with this is like, I feel like a lot of this stuff is under the surface with people, but people don't recognize it or know that that's what it is. Or, and I mean, I could think of, as I'm hearing you talk and like describe these type of behaviors, is like I can think of like my family members, I can think of people I work with who have these tendencies, but like they're not recognized as that's what it is. And so
Sure.
that,
Yeah, no,
if that
I
makes sense.
totally see what you're saying. And yes, like it's a spectrum for a reason. And there are so many people that experience anxiety, high levels of anxiety. And though they're experiencing high levels of anxiety, a, a non autistic or a non neurodiverse person might be able to better cope with it or have that internal voice to say, like, it's going to be okay and we're going to calm down. And like tomorrow at this time, this will all be over. Um, but a person with autism doesn't necessarily have that insight to be able to look forward. A person with autism is living in the moment, which, so many of us would benefit from, just living in the moment. And if the lights and the sirens or a crowd of people have gathered or whatever that moment might look like for them, that is what they're responding to. They're not necessarily responding to what they're worried about is going to happen tomorrow. They're worried about what's happening in that moment. And so then it falls upon us as the people supporting them through that moment to identify what it is that's causing them anxiety. But I do agree with you that there are many people out there in my own family and friends who are like, yeah, there's a little bit of something going on there because they're having a hard time handling that anxiety or the stress or the stimuli that's around them.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm glad that you spoke to that about being in the present in the moment, because it's something that I preach all of the time. It's like we should like be in the present in the moment. It's a lot less anxiety driven when we're in the present moment. When we get outside of that is when things get really complicated and complex. But
It's funny because we sometimes say that you'll know if a person with autism likes you or not because they will let you know,
Mhm.
as opposed to if non-autistic, non-spectrum people, we're hiding it and we're putting on a false front to just get through the day, and after work we're like, oh my gosh. But someone with autism, if they are unhappy, they will let you know right
Yeah,
away.
right. I know that's kind of brilliant. I love that about
Way to live. Yeah.
yes. Yeah, instead of just suffering in silence, or yeah, I agree. What can you give us some more information on, like, I know the phrase on the spectrum gets used a lot, and kind of understanding like what does that actually mean, or what is that in terms of like what you teach people about that?
So, um, as I mentioned, every person with autism you've met one, because every person has unique combinations of strengths and challenges and what they're dealing with. The same diagnosis can look completely different One child might be verbal and struggle socially. Another child might be nonverbal. And when I say child, I also do mean adults. Another person might be nonverbal, might be excellent with patterns, or might be excellent with directions, right?
Mhm.
Uh, and and determining like who do I have here with me, and what is their strengths, and how can we use those strengths to um, to help them. You know, if somebody's great at directions, where's your mom?
Mm.
Where's your people?
Mhm.
Take me to them. What's your address? You know, people with autism are often taught crucial bits of information so that if they do get lost, they do know their name, their address, their phone number, um, mom's name, you know, different where they go to school. And so sometimes maybe they're not digging giving you their name right at that moment, but maybe they can tell you the name of their school. Maybe they can tell you the town that they live in. Because that is something, particularly in my school, but I know other schools too, is practiced constantly because it's an essential life skill to be able to identify yourself.
Right.
Yeah, and you know, if a person is nonverbal, looking for some kind of device or system for communication that travels with that person. It might be something called a PEC system, which is a little booklet full of Velcro um, words that they can use to communicate. Or it might be a tablet that they sometimes wear across themselves on a strap, and they can use that tablet to identify themselves or to request something or to say what's wrong if something hurts them and they've been injured.
Yeah. Wow. This is all such good information. I'm like, man, I wish I had all this back when I was still online because it's really, really, really helpful. Like, to hear and understand this. Can you we talked about it before we started recording, but I want to make sure that people hear of this because it sounds incredibly valuable to take out into your community is the blue envelope program that you were talking about. Can you explain a little bit about what that is?
Sure. Here in New Jersey, I don't know where else this is being disseminated, but I know that there's a blue envelope program where if a person is on the spectrum or neurotypical, they can go to their police department and get a blue envelope which has information about them they can fill out or have someone fill out for them. And if they drive and they get pulled over for something, when they're getting their registration and their insurance card, they can also pull the blue envelope out of their glove box, give that to the officer, and that would provide some information about this individual that the individual might not be able to verbalize during a stop because, of course, anxiety increases when you get pulled over.
Mhm.
And it sort of helps both parties. It helps the person being pulled over, and it also gives information to the officer.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds very empowering to the person as to know that they're not trying to shuffle all their paperwork or and it empowers the police officer too to know, okay, like I know what to do here. Like I
Right, right. Because if you pull somebody over and you're trying to talk to them about what you pulled them over for, and this person is scripting the same line over and over again, or they're refusing to look at the officer, you know, in so many cases that can be considered defiance or giving the officer a hard time. But having that information just prevents that whole miscommunication from happening.
Yeah, awesome. Do you have any wisdom or expertise to share when it comes to like thinking about running a call and um collaborating, working with family members or caregivers, I guess, of like how could we show up better as first responders in that situation?
Well, and I think that's an awesome question because showing up to somebody's house when they're on a call, there's an autistic individual and their family is there. The family may seem very overprotective, They may have had past negative experiences with authorities, and they may seem to be, just really going above and beyond to protect this individual. Um, and it might seem like interfering. It might seem like getting in the way of an officer or team doing their job. But really, what the parent is doing is appropriately protective, particularly for an individual that might not be able to communicate themselves. And of course, for an officer to determine that, or an ambulance worker to determine that an individual is unable to communicate, it's through trial and error with that person. But a family member that's there or a friend that's there would be able to shed some light on the situation and to let them know, hey, this person can't communicate with you in a typical way, but I can help you.
Mm-hmm.
That can be of great benefit. Also, an officer could ask a family member, like, what calms them down? Or how can I communicate with them? And phrasing is so important because it's one thing to say, what helps to calm them down versus what's wrong with them,
Mm-hmm.
which I have heard with my own, what's wrong with them.
Yeah.
And it immediately puts people on the defensive. Asking specific, concrete questions rather than open-ended ones is a way to gather information without just making it seem overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that. And it makes me laugh inside hearing the calm down part because, like, that was always one of my, actually, it's not that nice, but one of my favorite things of watching new, um, firefighters come through or anything is you trying to use the calm down phrase and like it doesn't work on anybody. Like it doesn't
Oh,
matter. Like you say calm down and you're like, no, actually like, it just does it escalates things. So
honestly, when my husband says that to me, calm down, yeah,
oh,
it doesn't work at all.
no. You're like, game on, let's go. I'm ready. Like, no, it doesn't
Right.
work. Yeah, we should just get it out of our vocabulary because it doesn't work or asking.
I think it's really important to also acknowledge the expertise of the family that's supporting the individual, saying like, you know the best what usually works. Uh,
Mhm.
Parents are used to judgment from so many places, from the cashier at the supermarket, right? Child's having a meltdown and the cashier is giving advice. The grandparents, the friends, everybody, the internet, everybody's got 2 cents to pour some type of judgment onto parents who are working really hard to do their best.
Mhm.
So I think of really avoiding judgment and saying what's wrong with him or what did you do or weren't you watching him? You found a lost child. Well, weren't you watching? Who was watching him? It really doesn't do anyone any good to approach things from that matter, from that perspective. Um, so yeah, I think that phrasing things so that you have people wanting to help versus going on the defensive is important.
Sure. Yeah, and I think slowing your tactic sounds a lot like slowing down, like taking a step back, utilizing the resources that are there with you that you can, and thinking outside the box, like what typical communication may look like may be different, and having that pen and paper to write on or the tablet or something like that, that's really helpful.
There's one thing that I want to bring up, and that is the issue of water and water safety. I had mentioned that, I'm down, we call it down the shore here in Jersey. I'm down at the beach and there's the ocean and we have lakes and we have lagoons and people with autism are attracted to the water.
Mm.
It doesn't matter if it's a little swimming pool in a backyard or a river or a pond. There's something about the water that just becomes very desirable. And when an individual elopes, many times they are headed to the water. And out of I think that the statistic is out of all the accidental deaths that happen among people with autism, 93% of them involve drownings.
Hmm. Wow.
80%.
Wow.
So having a plan in communities to, you know, get to the water and to make sure that the individual didn't head to the water is crucial when somebody goes missing.
Wow. I had no idea. Wow.
Yeah. It's a startling figure.
Yes.
That is, where the accidental deaths happen.
Wow. Huh. Well, and when you say eloped, can you tell us a little bit about what that means exactly?
Sure. Often a person with autism will try to leave, try to get out of their house and go for a stroll without telling anybody. My own grandson did it. He, a few years ago, left the house. Mom and dad were it was just an average day, and he left without anyone noticing, and they did find him down on the end of a dock by their house,
Gosh.
looking at the water. So that, that's my personal, I always insert that into every interview that I do, every training that I do, because I think it's just such a startling statistic. And I think that parents that deal with eloping or families that deal with even adults eloping,
Mhm.
it's crucial that a plan is in place and that a community has an action plan so that we can find individuals before something tragic happens.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm glad that everything worked out okay in your situation. And
Yes.
now that's a powerful story to take everywhere.
Yeah, definitely. And, I always advocate because I speak to a lot of grandparent and parent groups. I always advocate swimming lessons.
Mhm. Mhm.
That is important. I know some police departments have things like the Angel Sense trackers. Some parents put Apple AirTags in children's shoes just to make sure that, something is on them. But, many times individuals elope and they're not wearing shoes.
Right.
It
Mhm.
might be wintertime and they're not wearing coats.
Mhm.
These are some of the challenges that our families deal with.
Wow. Wow, that's incredible. Wow. Can you, speaking of like the talks and the trainings, I want to make sure that you get to talk about what you are doing with first response autism and how you're showing up to help campaign the education side and the training side of things and what exactly that looks like.
Sure. I provide trainings to police departments all over the country, both in person or virtually. And in fact, next month I'm doing one at our local police academy, which I'm very excited about because I can reach so many different towns at once. And, if anybody is interested in learning more about the trainings, I'm happy to, talk about that.
Mhm.
My website is firstresponseautism.com, or you can drop me an email at info@firstresponseautism.com. And I'd love to hear from people, even if it's just to say hi.
Yeah, absolutely. So share with us a little bit about like what's your mission behind what you're doing?
My mission behind what I'm doing is to facilitate communication, to keep people safe, and to just, make a better life for people who have autism. I have had parents over the years that were afraid that their, 6'2" big teenage son was going to elope and really get into a lot of trouble because he wasn't able to talk. He wasn't able to tell an officer that he was lost or that he just wanted his mom and dad. Um, and and even, having a grandson myself sort of shifted my perspective even further to like, I just think that first responders' jobs are difficult enough. It's throwing autism into the mix without the right tools to support those individuals um, is something that shouldn't be.
Mhm.
There should be support and guidance and resources available so that anytime an officer comes across somebody who just doesn't seem like a typical, like getting typical responses, that it crosses into their mind, hey, maybe this is what that woman was talking about.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, I can think of so many opportunities where it could have been so helpful, just like you said, to switch your communication tactic around instead of getting frustrated that something's not working or you're not making progress or getting anywhere. Is like it could be so incredibly helpful and like really powerful to show up for your community in that way too, where anybody with autism knows they can trust the police, they can trust the firefighters, like that they don't feel like a threat as well.
Right. And you know what, on our side of things, on the educational side of things, we're teaching our children, as they do at mainstream schools, all about community helpers and all about like what does a policeman look like in a uniform? What does the ambulance worker, what does the fireman look like? And that's something that we're working on because we think those skills are important. So, having both parties working on that, even better.
Hmm.
Wonderful.
Yeah, we used to do that. I think it was either September or the beginning of October here in Colorado was always like fire prevention week. And it was
Yeah.
a thing to go into the schools and we would do a demonstration, like make it so fun, but like putting on your gear and putting on our masks and regulators and everything to show them like we look, and then it looks kind of scary and it sounds way different, but teaching them like, hey, firefighters love high fives, like come give us a high five as if we're searching for somebody, in a fire in a smoked out area and we don't want them to hide or run away, but it was a cool way of being able to have fun and do it. And
What a great strategy. We have the fire department showing up to our school next week for that reason, with the guy in the costume that looks like a dog, and they'll put on the Dalmatian, and then they'll put on their gear, and they'll push the fire smoke detectors, all of that.
Mhm.
Um, but I think that high five strategy is an awesome one, and I might steal that one from you and
Yeah,
share that with our firefighters next week.
absolutely. Yeah. It's not really mine to claim for sure, but take it because
Fun.
it is
It's fun.
helpful. So, yeah. Well, one other thing I want to just like offer to or speak to is like if there's somebody listening, let's say they're either recognizing this in themselves that maybe perhaps they never have, or they're dealing with a family member or a kid who is like a parent that doesn't have the education. What's the best direction or resource you think for folks that can really resonate or are looking for some extra help in navigating this?
I think that starting with your local doctor and talking to your doctor for referrals to, um, neurologists or psychologists or, other professionals that might be able to guide them through that journey of discovering, they may have autism and they may have other neurological situations that are making it more difficult for them to process or to communicate or to have more anxiety than they should. And just that's a good starting point. There's so much information on the internet, good, bad, and otherwise, that I would stick with the professionals to get my information.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think it's just helpful. I know, I mean, I hear it in different ways at different times from different clients, but I think it's just people don't have the resources or know where to go for sure. Or like they're slowly, I think the stigma around this is getting broken as well too, because I think it just wasn't looked at for a long time or understood of what was actually going on. Um, and now,
Right. I think that focusing on like different doesn't necessarily mean dangerous.
Mhm. Mhm.
Different just means different.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there are. I mean, like the school that you're at, and there are different resources of ways to help kids and adults navigate
Definitely.
this and still have a really beautiful life.
Mhm. Sure. Absolutely. I think that building these type of bridges through training and understanding, um, it's just the goal to create communities where people with autism feel safe to call for help when they need help,
Mm-hmm.
or for their families to call help when help is needed.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'm so like very, very honored to hear about what you're doing and so happy to support the cause and the charge that you're leading. And I will for sure put all of your contact information in the show notes too, so people can get in touch with you and like 100% advocate that departments, fire, police, EMS, everybody should be doing this kind of training because we need to know how to work with people with autism and to recognize it and to shift our tactics just like we would on anything else. So I'm so honored and really, really excited to see how this grows for
Well,
you.
thank you. Thank you for giving it the importance that I really think that it deserves.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's all very fascinating and helpful, I think, for sure. So, any last words or anything that you want to share or to give our listeners?
Um, I think that just remembering to have empathy and to slow down, step back, and just try to figure out what is it that this person needs.
Hmm. Yeah, brilliant. Well said.
And swimming lessons.
And swimming lessons for really everybody. Yes, no, that's so, so smart. Well, to end on a totally random question, because you do visit the Jersey Shore, and I have never been there. So,
Okay.
if I was coming to the Jersey Shore, what would be the number one food item that I should definitely have?
Oh my gosh, what a question. Boardwalk pizza is amazing. New Jersey pizza is amazing, but Boardwalk pizza just has that extra special something. And an orange twist cone. That those two items. Of course,
Whoa. Okay. Nice. It is the pizza. Would that be like thick crust or thin crust? What's the style?
it's not like a crispy, it's like a thin, floppy, cheesy, enormous slice that you eat walking down the boardwalk, and it's pretty awesome.
That sounds great. I love it. No, I love it. Awesome. Well, I'll have to make my way out there sometime.
Come visit.
Yeah. So, well, Jennifer, I again can't express enough gratitude to what you're doing and how you're serving the community and doing all of these things. And really, really honored to have you on the podcast and know like this conversation will be so valuable for people to hear and to start getting the education and the training that they need. So thank you again so very much. Thank you again to all our amazing listeners. You guys truly make it happen, and I am super grateful for you. We would love your 5-star review, your rating. If you subscribe, like, and follow us would be amazing. And also share this episode with somebody in your community or someone who you love, someone who you feel like could benefit from all of the goodness coming out of this episode. We know that we can show up in different ways for our community, safer, calmer, more compassionate interactions with one another. So, subscribe, share with your team, leave us a review on a new tactic maybe you tried out there that made a difference. Your insight may just help another crew keep someone safe tomorrow. So, we appreciate you. Keep going out there and being incredibly awesome, and I can't wait to see you on the next podcast.